Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends to dish up some movie news and review films, either current or classic. And this week is not a departure from our norm. We're going to be reviewing the new Steven Spielberg pop culture mashup, Ready Player One, based on the book by famed ? I would say so at this point, author Ernest Cline. We're also going to be dishing up a little bit of movie news. But before we get into all that, let me introduce you to some pretty wonderful guys who are going to be helping us out in our conversation tonight. Jim Pugliafico, welcome to the show, babe.
Thanks, and glad to be here. Welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Whoop, whoop. And Will Lindis is here too. Welcome, Will.
Hey there, listeners. Hey there, Brad, Jim, and guests soon to be announced. So glad to be here talking movies with you tonight.
Glad to have you here with us, Will, and tipping our VR visor rather than a hat. We do have a special guest joining us this week. Guys, he is one of our favorite podcasters ever, but beyond that, he's one of the coolest people we've ever had the pleasure of meeting randomly in line at a film festival. Adrian Charlie from the Green Screen of Death podcast is here with us. Adrian, what's going on? Hey.
Hey guys, thanks very much for the intro, Brad. That's very kind of you. And yeah, that was I tell people that story all the time. It was Jim who pulled me in, his smiley eyes, and just looked like such a friendly person. And you guys, we were in the express line every morning together, so
yeah,
we all just started talking and stuff, and that's how we ended up here, I guess.
Yeah, Adrian, it's that was amazing, and what's sad about it though is that that morning express line is no more.
Yeah, I heard about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so I'm like, how are we going to make cool new friends now? That's one less opportunity to meet cool people. It's a pain in the ass to get up in the morning, but look what came out of it. A great friendship and, two podcasts melding together. It's awesome.
There's something interesting to be said there about there's this cool advancement in technology that lets us now do our fast passes from wherever. But as a result of that, you lose out on some of those face-to-face interactions. Some of that, the virtual sort of has overtaken reality in a few spots there. So interesting that we can shoehorn that message in before we get to our main review.
Yeah. Well, Adrian, we are totally delighted to have you back with us on the show. It's been far too long. I think the last time was our sort of our own mashup during Fantastic Fest, which seems like a whole year ago at this point. It was a lifetime ago, but we're glad to have you here. And want to give a shout out to a bunch of guys who are hanging out with us in the live chat. Well, it could be more than guys. I don't mean to assume everyone's gender. We've got about 10 people hanging out with us so far in the live chat. So we'll say hey to Austin. We've got a couple Sams. We've got a few other folks. Steve is with us as well. This is the romper room moment, Jim always calls it. I see Sam and Steven. Welcome. Glad to have all of you with us. Hey, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Ready Player One once we get to our main movie review. So definitely feel free to share those as we are discussing the film. Sometimes the chat moves pretty quick, though. We can't always keep up. So please don't be disheartened if we don't read a comment on air. We'll try to get to as we can. Jim, you're making faces at me. What's up?
No, not making faces. I'm just saying, keep the chat going in there. That's with a lot of people in there. We do read it, and we may see your comment go by and get a mention on the show. And it's always nice to mention cool comments on the show because it livens things up. So hope you guys keep it going, even if we're not directly involved in every response and in the conversation.
Indeed. Well, we'll certainly be following along and responding as best we can. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of conversation about Ready Player One. So guys, before we get to that conversation, though, we do have some movie news that we want to share and discuss. So what do you think? Are we ready to just go ahead and dive right in?
Yeah, we got some news to talk about, and then we're going to get into some fun movie talk too.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, then here we go. Some movie news. All right. So this is the part of the show where we tell you what we are excited about in terms of what's going on in the film industry these days. Let's go ahead and let's start with Jim. Jim, what's got you pumped up this week?
I saw some news today from one of the websites about a sequel to a movie from a few years ago that we really liked called Creed. Creed 2 started filming today or this week. And how do we know this? Because Sly Stallone, one of the co-writers for this movie, as well as the first movie, chimed in on Instagram and he said, "Hey, you know the old cliche that it seems like yesterday, and but it does, and it's very exciting moment to be here. Getting ready to watch Creed 2 commence filming. Very exciting day. The actors and production team has been waiting a long time for this film to start. So, ladies and gentlemen, get ready to watch the fists start flying." So yeah, I'm excited for Creed 2. We got Michael B. Jordan coming back after his amazing job in Black Panther. We all love that in Black Panther. Tessa Thompson is back, Felicia Richard. And it's gonna be amazing. We got a new director. Ryan Coogler is not directing. However, he is an executive producer, and he is writing the movie. We got this guy named Stephen Capel Jr. Don't know much about him. He did a movie called The Land or something like that, and I don't know about it. I did not see it. So we got a fresh face, and that's, to me, that's always kind of, it does. People may see that as, oh my God, what are we going to do without Ryan Coogler, because he's amazing. But it's always exciting to kind of see like what a fresh talent can bring to a movie too. And so it kind of gives you a clean slate to think about it. The movie comes out November 21st this year, which seems like a pretty short timeline for a movie that's just starting to film this week. But so it's going to be interesting.
So I gotta ask, Adrian, were you a fan of Creed?
Oh yeah, I love Creed. That movie rules, and I didn't know they have a new director for this one. So I had a quick look at his IMDb just now, and he's
nothing there, right? Not much.
Yeah, a lot of shorts, but it looks like he's the kind of person who has put in his time and effort. So if Coogler is going to trust him with the project, then hey, I'll trust him too, because why not, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, I think it's November 21st of this year, not next year. So yeah, short timeline.
Whoa, that seems really fast.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, it's not a huge special effects driven movie, so those things factor in too. I'm excited. Like Creed was on my list, I think. A couple of years ago, top 10 of the year, I believe, or maybe on many lists. Will, Brad, we all love that movie. So I'm excited for the second one. Sequel or not, bring it on. I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah, one of the things that might help in getting it to the screen so quickly, and I'm right there with you, like November feels like very tight, because you got to imagine not only do they have to do principal photography, but then they have to go into the editing bay. They've got to make sure they get a cut. They're going to do some test audience screenings. They're going to have to recut. That's really, really tight. But one of the things for these types of movies that sometimes takes up some of that early production time is just getting the actors in shape. And if you think about it, like, who do we have in this movie? Let's see. We've got Michael B. Jordan, who just came off of being just absolutely ripped in his last screening. Tessa Thompson. Actually, hell, all of these characters just came out of Marvel movies, right? Tessa Thompson, Michael B. Jordan, and Sylvester Stallone were all in Marvel movies in the last year. So, I mean, a lot of them, like, they've gotten through that. The cast already knows what they're doing. The director's going to have to get a feel for things, but I mean, I'm guessing Coogler's going to have his hand in things in some way, shape, or form here. So I'm looking forward to this. I love the first Creed film. I thought it was a great step forward for a franchise in a new direction. A franchise that was already pretty darn good. So yeah, bring this on.
Indeed. Definitely can't wait for this one. Loved Creed. It was amazing on so many levels. So awesome news, Jim. Good stuff. Will, what have you got this week?
So yeah, back in 2013, there was this short film that was going around. You may have seen it shared on Facebook. Otherwise, it may have just come and gone for you. It was this movie called Cargo. It was an Australian short film about this man who is infected with like some sort of like zombie virus in some sort of dystopian zombie world, and he was trying to transport his infant daughter safely before he ended up turning. And that was the purpose of the short. And it was remarkably well done. It was shared quite a bit amongst like film and zombie film fans alike as, hey, there's still life left in this genre. Here's an interesting thing that you can do, even if you're doing the same old zombie stuff. Well, that director, that producer have come back and they have converted this short film into a feature film, also called Cargo. They have recast the lead. This time it is Martin Freeman, Bilbo Baggins himself. This is coming out very, very, very soon. It's going to play at the Tribeca Film Festival, which is coming up really soon. And then it's going on to Netflix on May 18th. So within about a month and a half, you're going to get a chance to see this. I also like that they've brought on Christina Satan as one of the producers. She helped work on The Babadook. So I think in converting this short into a feature, you need someone who knows how to make quality films within this genre. And I think she definitely has the chops to help make that work. So I'm pretty excited for Cargo. I loved the short film. I always love it when a short film maker is given the resources to fully take that vision into a feature-length territory. So bring this on May 18th. Will you guys be tuning in with me?
I hadn't really heard of this until the trailer popped out today on some of the news sites. I watched the trailer and it looks kind of interesting, even though, zombie fatigue is pretty high with me right now. I do love Martin Freeman. This has a slightly maybe different twist on it. I'm not sure. We'll see. I never did see the short. We'll see what happens. I'll probably keep my ear to the ground on this one and see if it's going to be worth watching. And by that, I mean, will it offer something new enough or interesting enough to kind of break the zombie boredom that I'm in right now?
Maybe that's why I'm yawning. All the zombie talk is making me sleepy. I mean, I haven't.
Thank you, The Walking Dead.
Right. I mean, I haven't seen Cargo. I mean, it sounds interesting. I would check it out. But yeah, the zombie fatigue is totally a real thing. I hung in there with Walking Dead as long as I could. Jim, we have 52 episodes of Fear the Walking Dead on our DVR that we're never going to watch. We might as well just delete them. But my hope is that a feature film would be way better. I mean, Train to Busan was amazing, right? And that's got zombies. So I'm totally willing to give an hour and a half to 2 hours of my time over, to checking this out. At least it's not a TV show commitment. So we got that going for it.
Yeah, the cool thing about when you hear zombie, I automatically get a little weirded out. I think, no, I'm not interested in that. But you said Australian filmmaker, and they have a way of making those movies their own kind of thing. Like Wormwood was a zombie film that was totally kick-ass. And anytime Australians make genre films, I'm all in. Sign me up.
That's one of the things, I think that most frustrates me about The Walking Dead as a show. Don't get me wrong. I'm still watching, ? At some point I'll convince myself to stop. But I feel like it's created this oppressive feeling of this is what the zombie genre is. And we've gotten to see that kind of also reflected through a lot of the kind of really dull, kind of American film releases between the air quote zombies of the Resident Evil features or anything along those lines. But or World War Z, which, you know, when we're talking about things that were converted from book to movie, I think that's one of my like least favorite examples. But there is a lot of great stuff going on in that genre right now, from The Girl with All the Gifts, from, you know, you mentioned Wormwood, to oh gosh, I think it was called Les Femmes. So it's like a French film that came out last year. The zombie genre can still be really good and interesting and give you that terror, give you that feeling of like just lost dystopian, but you just have to sort of shake yourself free of you know, just all of the bad that's out there, because unfortunately there is so much bad. But hopefully this is not one of them. I mean, the short was good, so I hope the feature is good too.
Fingers crossed. I suppose we will see. Yeah.
Let us know.
Well, for me this week, I have a little bit of Star Wars news. I'm not sure if this counts as a spoiler, you guys. Jim, I asked you earlier. You said probably no. Is it a spoiler if we talk about two of the actors who are going to be working closely together in the next movie? Would you consider that a spoiler?
I mean, their characters will be working closely together.
Well, the actors, yes. So the characters will be spending time together in the next movie. Is that a Star Wars spoiler?
I said no, but I don't think so. I don't think so. We don't know in what capacity they're going to be spending time together.
It's two names that are right next to each other on the IMDb, more or less. Like, I don't think this is going to be a spoiler. If anyone does think this is a spoiler, then I don't know. I got nothing for you. This isn't a spoiler. This is not a spoiler.
Adrian, what do you think? Are you good if we talk about that?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Like, it's I kind of figured that would be the case anyway. So
yeah. Well, all right. So cat's out of the bag. John Boyega was recently at AwesomeCon in Washington, D.C. And he was telling stories about this text message he got from Daisy Ridley. And even though John Boyega hasn't seen the script for episode 9 yet, I guess Daisy was talking to J.J. Abrams. And Daisy messaged John Boyega very excitedly and was like, oh my God, we're going to be working together again. Our characters won't be separated in episode 9. So Rey and Finn back together once again. What do you guys think about this? Are you excited to see these two characters back in action together as opposed to spending the whole freaking movie practically apart, like with The Last Jedi?
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is why this wasn't a spoiler to me, because it feels like that's what you do with two of the leads of your movie in the third film in your trilogy. Like, if you look at your second film as the time where people kind of go off their different ways and go on whatever quest or learn whatever it is they know, then the third the climax of the trilogy is bringing all of those things together and resolving whatever needs to be resolved. So the idea that two of the names that are on the poster are going to be spending time with each other in the next movie, not a spoiler, but still cool to hear.
Yeah, for me, yeah, I mean, of course I want to see two of the characters spend time together. The two I might be interested in are maybe Finn and Poe, but you know, because I think they had kind of a fun friendship going, and I'd like to see that continue. And that was another one, and this is a mild spoiler, that we kind of saw kind of split apart a little bit in The Last Jedi, too much to my disappointment. But the movie is what the movie is. I can't like rewrite the movie for them. That's just kind of a personal thing of mine. I just thought their friendship and the way they formed their relationship was just so special in you know, the first movie they were in together, that I wanted to see it continue. But that sounds maybe a little too fanboyish. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's a good move. Like, in the first movie they were together, they seemed to be setting up Finn and Rey to have almost like a romantic angle. Like, he had a bit of a crush on her, you could tell. But the dynamic has changed since the last movie, because it looked like he was more interested in. I may be butchering the character's name. Was it Rose?
Yeah, Rose.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought they might be setting up like a love triangle kind of thing, but who knows? I'm excited.
We're gonna have a love square between Poe, Rey, Finn, and Rose in the next one.
Or we could just have like this delightful polyamorous relationship where just all of them are just like, fuck it, it's a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. Let's just all intermingle.
Things could be different.
That's where like Kylo Ren shows up and he's like, the Force is just one big open relationship, Rey.
Well, yeah, I mean,
everybody can use it.
Is that this year's Star Wars movie or next year's? I'm losing track at this point.
That's like 2019 because this year we get Han Solo. Just instead of December, it's more mid-year. But yeah.
Instead of 4 people in a love situation, we got one guy solo. Anyway, all right.
I guess we'll find out who shot first.
Oh,
whoa!
Oh my gosh! Wow. Well, there is a furry in the movie. Anyway, so
what the fuck is this even?
I don't know, but it's fun. That's all I care about. Steve Sosa in the chat says Rose was super thirsty, so I related to her. Steve, sometimes when you're thirsty, you just, you got to have a long, cool drink of water. So hopefully this fills that gap. Anyway, guys, we got a whole movie to discuss.
Yes.
How do you feel about maybe switching tracks?
This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Player
1.
Nice.
All right, so let me just say this up front. I imagine most people, and we've got a ton of folks hanging out with us. It's so great to have you guys here. But I imagine everyone who's hanging out has probably already seen Ready Player One. It was a huge opening this weekend, and but just in case there is anybody who has not seen the film and you're a little on the fence, you kind of want to know our opinion, whether we think you should check it out, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about Ready Player One, completely spoiler free. Unlike other podcasts who say we're not going to talk spoilers at all and then spoil the whole motherfucking thing, we're going to do our best not to do that for you. And we won't point fingers at podcasts, but it's not a podcast represented on this show. So take that for what you will. But we'll give you fair warning before we open things up for spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, worry not. We won't ruin your experience. All of that said, here we go, guys. Prepare for your trip into the Oasis for Ready Player One. All right, and Steve had to drop out of the chat because he hasn't seen it yet, but he's actually on his way, so go see it right now. So, Steve, bless your heart. You're not listening at the moment. We hope you enjoy. Maybe you'll come back later in the week and listen, weigh in, let us know your thoughts on Facebook, Twitter. That goes for everybody. We'd love to hear your thoughts, even if you're not hanging out with us live tonight. Through the magic and power of digital tape delay and the internet, you can still be part of the conversation. So hit us up on social media. Guys, let's get this thing rocking and rolling. Will, you are a giant video game nerd. You're a giant 80s nerd, just like I am, just like a lot of people are. I can't think of anyone more fitting on the show to introduce this movie. Just give us the basic setup of Ready Player One and your initial thoughts. Was this fun? Was this worth checking out in theaters? Should people skip it, rent it? What do you think?
Absolutely. So Ready Player One is based off of the novel by Ernest Cline. This story is about, it's the future, and there's this virtual reality world called the Oasis inside this future. Well, everyone in the world spends their time in this, collecting coins, fighting each other, living out whatever fantasies. The creator of this virtual world, well, one day he dies. And in doing so, he releases this video where he basically challenges everybody in the Oasis to find this hidden Easter egg. Because once you find that Easter egg, you control the Oasis and get his fortune. Which brings us to our lead, played by Ty Sheridan, character of Wade / Parzival inside of the Oasis, as he collects friends, dodges enemies, and goes on a mission to complete this quest. So I want to start off by saying that I've talked to each of you independently in some way, shape, or form, and I think that I'm going to come down on this probably the hardest of the four of us. But I want to preface all of that by saying any of the issues that I ended up having with this movie, I still had a lot of fun with it. I still liked it, and I would still recommend seeing it, especially on a giant screen. I saw it in 70 millimeter, and it looked absolutely glorious. So I think you should go see it. I think you're going to have fun. That said, there are some issues with this movie. Just like with the book was so much fun to read. It had some really, really bad, like, scripting, writing, pacing issues, but the nostalgia elements were so much fun that you couldn't help but have a good time reading it. And I think that's exactly the problem I had with Ready Player One as a film. I think the direction is fine. I think the performances are fine, aside from one, which I'll get to in a second. And Adrian knows what it is already, because I bitched to him about it. But
Not you.
I may not be the world's biggest TJ Miller fan, but more on that in a second. No, but I think that there are some kind of pacing, scripting issues with the script, just like there were with the book. And I don't mean like there's some obvious changes in terms of what pop culture references are used, and I don't think that's an issue. In fact, one of them replaces what my favorite pop culture reference in the book. It actually replaces it with what is now my favorite pop culture reference in the movie. So I'm cool with the changes. I'm cool with all of that. There was just a little too much convenience for my sake. Like, characters were too close to one another to make things very plausible. It felt a little cheap in some cases. And there's also this weird thing that I can't quite shake about. It does feel kind of weird. And yes, this is the premise of the story. That the kind of the young adult, most specialist character in all of the world, because this is, that type of story, just Spielberg helmed.
Mhm.
It's all about gatekeeping 80s nostalgia. And if you don't have this type of information, you're excluded from the Cool Kids Club, which unfortunately, when I read the book, that was pre-Gamergate. I've now watched the movie post-Gamergate, and that mentality has been spoiled a little bit for me. Not the fault of the movie, not the fault of the book, but it's the world that I live in, and it's the lens through which I ended up having to watch this movie. So
Will, real quick, because I know there's going to be some folks who aren't familiar, in 3 sentences or less, what is Gamergate?
Gamergate was a scandal that broke out on the internet a few years ago, where a group of people claimed that there was a problem with ethics in game journalism, and used that as a weapon / gatekeeping tool to keep women, minorities, LGBTQ people, other people, anyone who was not sort of the white cis kind of like hyper masculine and super aggro group from sitting at the table. Or at least that's my memory of it. Gamergate people might remember it differently. But anyways, but you can't change that. If you're going to make this movie, you're going to make this movie regardless, and you can't ignore that lens, because you'd have to basically rewrite the film otherwise. So it does hurt it a little bit for me, but at the same time, I can't think of a solution for it. Now, the solution that I would have is cast literally anyone in the role of IROC instead of TJ Miller, who I think is just the antithesis of funny. Please, outside of like kind of the disgusting things he said in real life, he's just not that entertaining for me. He always brings films down like a good star for me. Put anyone else in here. You don't even have to change the character. I think the jokes were fine, that character. I think the visuals were fine, but just anyone else delivering them would have helped me with those scenes. So anyways, we'll talk a little bit more in the spoilers section, but ultimately, this is a fun movie with some flaws, but the thing is that the flaws are, while they're fun to talk about, they're not necessarily going to diminish any of the actual enjoyment that you get from this film. So you probably should go check it out.
All right. Well, we'll appreciate your initial thoughts. I'm sure we'll unpack more as we get into spoilers. Jim, how about you? Where do you come down?
So yeah, I really enjoyed this movie, like way, way more than I thought I could after reading, well, not reading, but listening to the audiobook, and being generally turned off by several things in that book. First of all, I'm really not the world's biggest gamer. Everybody knows that. Although I have played Adventure and Zork and, Zelda and and a lot of like more adventure type games. And I know a lot of
futuristic VR racing.
Futuristic VR racing that makes me sick to my stomach. Yes, I play some of that, and I really, this movie was so much fun to me. I loved both the visual spectacle of this like movie and the main storyline. And so like pop culture references aside, and there are so many of them, the story really worked for me and kind of plays right into Spielberg's classic movie themes, like children or kids or young people as heroes against the adults, or rebels against kind of like the evil establishment of the system. That's kind of right in his wheelhouse. And some of his classic, mostly in, think of E.T., for instance. And that kind of whole thing made the movie thrilling for me. And that's what resonated with me. The main storyline, not the nostalgia pop-up book that this movie became. That stuff I can kind of put aside, and it's kind of cool. Oh, there's so-and-so and there's so-and-so. I'm not going to spoil a lot till we get there, but I just didn't think the book was very good. While I thought the concept was like really interesting about like, even for a low-level gamer like me, the execution of that book left me really cold. And so, and I may be in the minority on this, but I thought the movie was a vast improvement over the book. And I know we're going to get into, people really like the book maybe more than the movie. And I think that comes from the significant changes that the movie made to the story of the book. And we'll get into those in spoilers. Especially like if their favorite passage from the book is totally missing from the movie and replaced with something else. We'll mention that, even though the replacement thing is really fucking cool. And we're going to talk about that. They may have been in like their heart invested in, I can't wait to see such and such, how that's going to play on the screen. And then they get to it, or that part of the story, and it's just not there. So that's how some people compare books to movies. Like if everything from the book isn't done in the movie and done in a good way, then the movie's a failure. I don't necessarily agree with that in this case. The movie did a much better job with the characters than the book, especially the main character. And we can talk about that a little bit. Brad, you and I have talked about that a lot. This is I want to get into more, but I'll stop talking. This is a slam dunk. Highly recommend for me. I didn't mind the TJ Miller stuff. I kind of like his stuff on Silicon Valley. Haven't liked him all that much in a lot of movies, but he plays the same character all the time. Some of that humor works for me. It didn't ruin the movie for me. I would say this is a great movie. Go see it on the big screen. It's just a ton of fun. Probably way more than it should be, but I would say definitely a recommend for me.
All right, that's 2 out of 4. Let's keep this VR party going. Adrian, what did you think of Ready Player One?
Well, I wanted to start out just by saying I was very skeptical going in. I read the book as well sometime last year. And when the marketing came out, like the teaser trailer came out, I was like, I don't like the look of that at all. Like I thought Parsifal looked weird, and I thought Artemis looked weird, and I didn't even know who H was in the trailer. So it took a while to figure out. So all the way up until probably the last 2 trailers, I was kind of like, I'll see it. And I was kind of a little down on it. But I kept saying to myself, you know what, it's Steven Spielberg, going to go in with an open mind. And I went and watched it the night it opened here. And I'm so glad I did, because I had a freaking blast watching this movie. It's just so much fun, and it moves so well. And I'm happy with the changes they made from the book, because those changes help the movie move along that much better. So, I really enjoyed it. And I just wanted to say one defense of TJ Miller. I really like his voiceover work, and he's really good in How to Train Your Dragon. And I liked him in this one as well. So, but overall, there are some problems in this movie. It's not perfect. Some of those problems did spill over from the book. And I was worried about the whole cultural references and video game references. And I was worried that would be distracting, but it didn't distract me while I was watching the movie. I think some people might get distracted, but overall, I really enjoyed this one.
All right, so that's 3 big recommends. And Adrian, I remember some of that skepticism on Facebook. We were talking about that a little bit, and you're like, I don't know, guys, I don't know. But I'm glad to hear that it's something you walked away from having some enjoyment with. And I think I had some skepticism going in myself. I really enjoyed the book. But the book does have its issues for me. But one of the things that I love so much about the novel is just how much it packs in terms of 70s and 80s nostalgia and so many different references. When it's not just being a list of things, like when it's a whole page of like reference after reference, just to like shoehorn in the name of every computer system ever made or something, like that was boring to me. But the clever way it kind of wove a lot of different franchises and references in, I thought was great. But Jim, to your point, the main character, Wade Watts, in the book, I think is an annoying douchebag in a lot of ways. And I was glad to see that without spoiling, I think the movie kind of toned a lot of that down. Part of that, I think, is because, the book is really written like in the first person from his perspective, right? He's like, talking about what he did that day or what he knows. And I'll bring up macaroni and cheese as an example because it's not in the book or the movie, so it's not a spoiler for anything.
It's not a pop culture reference in the movie. I'm out.
Right.
I'm out.
But like, to give you an example, so in the book, like if Wade Watts were talking about macaroni and cheese, he'd be like, I knew everything about macaroni and cheese. I've been eating mac and cheese since I was 1. I knew the complete history of mac and cheese, how many different flavors of cheese mac and cheese could have. I even knew how many different ways you could prepare mac and cheese. So when I found out that the challenge involved making mac and cheese, I knew I couldn't be beaten. And the whole book is like that. Like,
yeah,
over and over and over again. So that really weighed on me. So going into the movie, hence my skepticism, I'm like, I like Ty Sheridan a lot, but oh my God, please don't let Wade Watts be like that in this movie. And to my supreme satisfaction and surprise, I was very glad to see that they toned a ton of that down. Not only that, but they kind of give some of the other characters stuff to do too. So it's not just the Wade Watts show. They make it more of an ensemble cast driven type thing. I do have some complaints there too, and we will get to that. But I think some of the main things I was worried about going in, they handled and addressed very, very well. We had the pleasure of seeing the world premiere of Ready Player One at South by Southwest Film a couple weeks ago. And it was funny because, it was great to be able to, see Spielberg and, the cast and Ernest Cline, the author, at the Q&A. But my favorite thing, Jim, there's this move that Parzival does in the movie, like where he kind of like jumps over someone and like pushes against their shoulder. And that was the same thing that Ty Sheridan did to you, to like leap over you to get on the stage at the premiere. So I was pretty tickled by that.
Who's that asshole guy taking pictures in the front there? Get out of my way.
Right.
Yeah.
But for me, this movie is a big, huge win on many, many levels. I do have some nitpicks, but there's a ton of Spielberg in this film, which makes sense because, Spielberg is involved. And I was a little worried that there was going to be like too much, like it was going to be a Spielberg self jerk off or something. And thankfully that was not the case. I think it handles a lot of the different properties that it brings in really well. I feel like I need to see this movie at least 12 more times, guys, to catch everything, because there's no way that I've caught it all at this point. But I totally agree. Definitely worth checking out on the biggest screen you possibly can. Also, the sound in this movie is really, really cool. Tried to see it somewhere with a great sound system. Unfortunately, when we saw it the second time, it was at our favorite Cinemark theater here in Tucson. And I don't know what. I don't know what was going on with their sound system, but like it was flat. It was kind of quiet and flat. And, when you see the movie in like a 200-year-old theater, and I'm exaggerating, in Austin, Texas, and the sound is amazing, and then, a brand new megaplex that went up a year and a half ago can't compete with the sound, that's a problem. So That was unfortunate. Maybe we'll see it a third time, Jim.
3D,
and the sound will be
3D.
better. I do kind of want to see it in 3D. We haven't gotten to do that yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, this is a huge one. Definitely. If you haven't seen it yet and you grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, whether you're a huge video game fan or a huge movie fan or a music fan, I think there's a lot here for you to enjoy.
Excellent.
All right.
So we're all on the plus side at least.
Yeah, everyone's positive.
Yeah.
It does seem to be the case. All right. Well, guys, I think we've done our due diligence in not spoiling the film. We've got a lot to unpack and a lot to talk about. Are we ready to rip the Band-Aid off and open up spoilers?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right. Sounds good. So if you haven't seen Ready Player One yet, whether you're listening live right now or listening through the magic of digital tape delay, this is your chance. Go ahead, mute us, pause us, whatever you need to do. Go see the film. If you don't want to be spoiled, come on back and then listen to the spoiler section of the show. Also, we've got some cool plugs coming up for you at the end, so you definitely don't want to miss those. So if you do put us on mute for the next half hour or so, make sure to unmute us if you want to hear those. All right? So, also, Adrian just put in the chat. Adrian, this is awesome. He says, our book spoilers okay. Let's throw that out to everybody. You can't help but draw comparisons between the book and the movie. Are we okay with book spoilers as well?
I am.
I think we're going to have to. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. It's for those people who haven't read the book yet and are going to want to get to it. Sorry, we might spoil some things that are in the book and not in the movie. So just be aware of that.
Indeed. And we do have a few folks who are jumping off the live chat right now because they haven't seen the movie yet or read the book. Guys, we love you. We heart you. We'll see you next time, hopefully. But book spoilers and movie spoilers are completely okay at this point. I have awkwardly rambled enough to give you time to step away if you need to. So, Adrian, let's go to you first. Where do you want to start?
On me. Well, I just wanted to list a couple of my things I thought they improved in the movie version of this of Ready Player One. In the book, Parzival, I think we've kind of talked about it a little bit. He's kind of a elite fanboy who lords over everybody, and he holds his knowledge over his friends, and he's basically a total jerk to everybody who doesn't know as much as him. And there's a lot of that in video games, and I think they kind of rounded those jagged edges of Parzival in the movie version, which I appreciated because they kind of, Spielberg did that by limiting the long stretches of a nostalgia circle jerk. And there was only one scene where they kind of quizzed each other and measured their e-penises on their knowledge of video games and pop culture from the 70s and 80s. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and I agree, Adrian. And there's a scene that kind of encapsulates that for me, because in the book it felt like, okay, I'm gonna tell, as a character, I'm gonna tell you how fucking awesome I am before I go and then just do it again, and then show you how awesome I am by doing what I said I could do. In the movie, I think they kind of do it at the same time. There's a scene toward the end in the climactic the last quest has to do with adventure and some kind of a small pixel thing, which I didn't even know about, but an Easter egg that's in there. And he's kind of explaining it as he's doing it, right? And he steps up to the machine, and I really liked how it worked visually in the movie. It's a very simple thing. He's just showing his screen and he's saying, but unless you've played the game, it's the little things that count. And he went right to this really small Easter egg thing that he did. And I thought that was very powerful. And I just thought it was very effective in the movie, and it just wasn't so much in the book.
Yeah, I'll agree with that point too, because I think that, that key scene there with adventure, that's one of the things that most closely ties from the book to the movie. Like, the book has basically 6 different challenges. Like, each key that they find also has a gate, and there's all these different challenges. But the one that's really consistent across the 2 is adventure. And I think that's the most important one because it's the first of these Easter eggs, and it makes sense. And I like that we got to see that. Nostalgia, when it's done right, can feel like a sort of like a historian, sort of like opening up the book and like opening the photo album and sharing the story about something that maybe you weren't around for, maybe something you didn't experience, but it can be a very inclusive thing. And that's what I feel from like sharing this adventure Easter egg with people. It lets people who are not playing games in 1980 feel and experience what that's like.
Yeah, I look at it this way. It's almost like, think of like a cartoon from the 80s that you really love, and maybe you have someone that never saw it for some reason, or they're younger now and they weren't alive back then, right? Do you either A, tell them exhaustively about this cartoon and why it was so cool and what it was about and its history, or do you just sit them down, call up the cartoon on Netflix and kind of watch it with them for a little while and then talk about it after? You know what I mean? And I think the movie kind of takes the latter approach. You get to kind of combine some of those elements, and I think it's a lot more effective that way, and also a lot less like, you know, look how awesome I am because I know everything, and more of like, here's this thing I love and let me show you why it's so cool.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that we did experience with Wade in the book is too much of the explaining why he's the best. And just admittedly, there is some of that in the movie too. Like I you know, if he's full douche nozzle in the book, you know, he's a little baby douche nozzle in this one at times. Yes. Like, there's a sequence where he's grilling the guy in charge of IOI, what's his name, Sorrento. And he basically does this. Oh yeah, is it this high school or that and this? Only a true fan would know that. And that was a little bit like, I get what he was trying to do, but it also came like, I really wanted one of the other characters to go like, man, that was really cool. I kind of want to punch you in the nose right now, but it was still cool that you used that trick on him, because it was obnoxious as fuck that he did that. Like, you know, I'm the real cool guy who knows all this information, and you're the corporate stiff because you don't know all of the same things I do. That felt a little like douchey to me.
Yeah, I thought those scenes were really good between he and Nolan Sorrento in the boardroom, and I thought all of the scenes with the 2 main characters were really good. I love Olivia Cooke, and I think she was great in this movie. I thought. Now, it's hard because these characters, at least 3/4 of the time, are in their avatars. And as we mentioned, or somebody mentioned early on I think it might have been you, Adrian, how kind of crappy the avatars looked in the trailers. And they weren't that much better in the movie, to be honest with you. And after a while, I didn't mind. I really got into kind of the whole character, not just how they look, but I thought the actors did a great voice acting job of bringing those obviously Avatar-looking characters to life in this movie, and I think that was quite a feat, and made it much more enjoyable for me, especially the relationship between Parzival and help me out, Artemis. Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Well, and it was so good to see the Artemis character get more to do here in the movie, because in the book, Wade is the mastermind, really, for the most part, behind everything. Like, yeah, at one point, like, Artie gets to one of the, the keys or the gates first. But, like, in the end, Parzival, of course, ends up winning. But in the book, he has this master plan of, like, falsifying financial records and getting himself arrested so that he's taken to IOI headquarters and made to be an indentured servant so he can, like, hack the company from the inside and bring down the shield. And it's just, like, vaguely ridiculous, right? Because he's the hero of everything. Whereas in the movie, we get a chance to see Artemis kind of get to step up to the plate, right? Like she ends up getting arrested. It's not an intentional thing. She kind of sacrifices herself so that Wade can keep going. She gets caught. And then through circumstance, she ends up being the one to help kind of bring this whole thing down from the inside. And it was nice to see that character get so much to do here. She's also leading sort of a quasi-rebellion question mark. That's kind of a new element that I don't really remember. And I just read the book again, and I don't remember. Were there any rebellion elements in the book that I'm just forgetting? No,
Man, not specifically stated, maybe.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But it still is the same thing. It's this small band of, well, we only see it through a small band, but it's this huge group of Gunters, right? That the small band gets together and kind of galvanizes this force against, against the big, quote, evil corporation. So yeah, in a way, that's kind of a rebellion. To me, it feels like a rebellion. It's kind of like the rebels against the what is it in Star Wars? Help me out.
The Empire.
The Empire. There you go. Yeah.
I love you, but you were bad in 1,000 tonight, man.
I get the concepts. I just don't remember all the names.
One of the things I think worked so well about this is that, and Jason French makes this point. He says in the movie, they don't really explain what's up with all the 80s nostalgia. In order to find the first key, everyone became obsessed with Halliday, who is the creator, watching all of the movies he listed in his almanac. So here in the movie, and this is one of the things that most interested me about this world of the Oasis. Like, there's all of this 80s nostalgia. Everything is 80s nostalgia and a little bit of late 70s nostalgia, right? But it all kind of makes sense because this is a world that has completely appropriated its culture from one person's specific interests, because everyone in the world has sort of collectively decided to join in on this quest within the Oasis, which they know is based off of this guy's interests. So it sort of makes sense. Like, if you're one of those people who's been like, why is there so much like 80s nostalgia happening in pop culture media right now? Well, here in this world, it's because you'll win $500 trillion if you know enough of your 80s nostalgia trivia. And that's a pretty compelling reason why. And to that point, this is now this video game world where everybody is still themselves, but personifying these 80s characters. One of the criticisms I heard of this movie coming into it from the trailers was you have the Iron Giant, who's this like amazing, peaceful giant, right? Based on his, he's created for war, but his arc is about peace. And he's in the trailer just like smashing shit, right?
And lasering shit with his eyes.
Right.
But the important thing to remember, I think would really help everyone to remember, the Iron Giant does not appear in this movie. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles don't appear in this movie. Ultraman doesn't appear in this movie. Godzilla doesn't appear in this movie. People in avatars represented by the Iron Giant,
right,
and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So a lot of, like, if you see like Freddy Krueger, that's not actually Freddy Krueger. It's some guy in his basement dressed like playing his Freddy Krueger avatar. And so because of that, if you see Iron Giant going out there smashing shit, it makes sense. If you play a game like Second Life or anywhere on the internet where people have avatars that they can represent as other things, you're going to see Sonic the Hedgehog over in the corner fucking Mario as the Iron Giant is in the corner like shouting racist epithets, and it's because those aren't characters. Those are avatars of real life human beings. And I think that's the important thing about this. You can see Iron Giant smashing shit because it's an avatar. It's not actually the Iron Giant from the Iron Giant movie.
Well, and it gets a little dicey too, because in the Oasis, like, not only are there avatars, but you can build things. So in this movie, the Iron Giant actually isn't an avatar. It's a robot constructed by H, and H is piloting the Iron Giant. So whatever the Iron Giant is doing, it's because H is having the Iron Giant.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what I really loved about the Iron Giant in this film is there's still elements of the Iron Giant's character. Like, at one point, Mechagodzilla has like ripped him in half or whatever, right? H is still in it, still piloting. And in order to get Parzival and the guys over to the castle, Iron Giant ends up piloted by H sacrificing itself, right? To like move them over onto its hand and make a bridge across the lava chasm or whatever. So I like that even though, yes, it is a robot, it is not the real Iron Giant, it's being controlled by someone else, some of those elements still do shine through. Also, this world has like artifacts, things that are created in the game that, you know, they aren't avatars, they aren't like robots that somebody made. They're like things that you can win. Chucky was an example of that, right? So Chucky is in the movie. And Chucky is Chucky. He's not being controlled by anybody. It's basically just a force of nature that you set loose. So it kind of blurs those lines between like avatar intent and you know, Oasis sort of environment elements in a really cool way.
But even that is like, it's still like someone's code, right? Like someone other than the guy that created the Chucky movies created this artifact. Someone other than Brad Bird and his animation team created this Iron Giant robot. And so because of that, you can get these characters doing things that you wouldn't normally expect them to do, even if they have, you know, they're probably programmed with some degree of reference to the original thing, because otherwise, like, why would you represent a thing if not to pay homage in some way, shape, or form? And I say that mainly because I literally have talked to at least 2 or 3 people who were thinking about not seeing it because they love the Iron Giant, rightfully so, but they were afraid of seeing their beloved character like mishandled. And I guess just kind of disclaimer, this is not the Iron Giant. This is the Oasis's version of the Iron Giant created by H, who is an actual human in this fictional world.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also wanted to talk a little bit, if you guys can talk about it, the Halliday character, and kind of like, it's interesting that this movie is based on video games and video game worlds, yet kind of Halliday's epiphany toward the end of his life, and that we see at the end of the movie, is kind of intimating that you kind of got to get out of that world a little bit, right? And live life in the real world. So the movie has this strange dynamic. Yeah, the movie has this strange dynamic going on where it really has this message, and it doesn't really hammer this message home, you know, I don't think too hard, obviously. The movie has a ton of fun with the video game stuff for 98% of it. And then we get this 2% that says, hey, what's really important is, you know, how you're living your life like outside of these worlds. That was kind of interesting to me. Do you guys have any of those thoughts too?
Adrian, what's your thought there?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that, because I was actually going to say something similar to what Jim said there. Halliday's an interesting character because I've seen criticism that he can be viewed as a villain. Like, after he died, he made everybody in the whole world worship him and study him, and all of these people are stuck studying him and all his archives, his whole life, all the things that he loves. He seemed to push creativity, and he didn't like rules. He liked breaking rules, but it didn't see a lot of creativity in that world. Like when you're wearing somebody else's skin, the creativity is a little bit limited there. And he kept everybody locked in with their VR headsets. So that's just, yeah. I thought that was pretty interesting to consider, how Halliday may not have been the awesome dude that we all think he was. Maybe that wasn't his intention. Maybe he thought somebody would solve it sooner, but I thought that was something interesting to consider.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. It's kind of got this, definitely he's a conflicted character, especially by the end of his life, and you could see that. It's hard to tell whether he really loved the Oasis, what he created, or maybe he regretted some of what he created, and kind of this world he created. It's an interesting way to think about it now that I've given it some thought.
Yeah, and that was one of my thoughts coming out of this too, like an area that I wish they had maybe explored a little more, although then I guess maybe it would have been a different movie, and so I'm asking too much of it. But here we've got a story about this world that has basically stopped developing new culture. this whole world is completely living within the culture of one particular person. This isn't just like our version of 80s nostalgia.
Right.
Like there is no forward advancement. Like this is the future, and looks like Overwatch is still one of the biggest games that you can play, which, you know, I'm cool with, but you know, I would still want to see like whatever like the next new thing is. There weren't really much in the way of like original characters. It was, you know, it was all throwbacks to things that were specifically from Halliday's life. And that makes sense because everyone is chasing this version of Halliday's Oasis. But what happens when you've got a culture that has stopped creating its own art and only lives by appropriating someone else's or something else's art? I think you kind of touch on that a little bit, but I think that, you know, maybe for me, and granted, I'm very nitpicky at this point, you know, maybe that point there at the end when it's like, you know, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we should unplug and live in reality. Like maybe they can even say, you know, and use that time to love one another or to create new things. You know, like I wanted to maybe hear like that little part too, just to sort of tie that ribbon together. Because I think it was right there. Like it was there through the film. They just needed to tie that together.
But to be fair, we're only seeing the Oasis through the hunt for the egg, right? Like we're not seeing all the other cool things about the Oasis that maybe have nothing to do with the egg. Like, you know, I think about like VR in its current state, right? There are several different like apps out there now that allow you to create things in 3D. Like I spent 2 hours the other day, like trying to make like a fucking like painted car thing in VR, and you get to like choose shapes and change their size and what colors you want to use and da 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 da. And like, you know, we don't see people in Ready Player One like out there using these amazing tools of the Oasis to create these new things. It's probably happening. The book references new planets opening and being coded stuff. But, you know, we're just seeing the 80s stuff. And then the other part of this whole thing about like, oh, we close the Oasis down on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's like this world is already in an economic slump. So way to like fuck them over even further, because people go to school in the Oasis. They don't go to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays now. People work real jobs in the Oasis. Do they not work those days now? Who's paying their salary on those days they don't work?
Oh man. Here we go.
Maybe I'm thinking about it too much, but I actually rolled my eyes so hard at that line because it seemed like such a just a pat add-on. You know what I mean?
So you're getting at something like we went at it from different directions, but I think what both of us were maybe looking for there, or all of us in some way, shape, or form, was maybe just a little bit more like this is a very fantastical world within this fantastical VR world, right? But there are some very real world implications, and we know that because we spend some time in the stacks. We spend some time in the learning centers, like, you know, the slave labor camps, basically. And so we know that these things have created a world that kind of a reality that is very shitty, and it is very much glossed over. We don't get to see what happens when people create new things. We don't get to see how people live their lives in this world. And again, this is a Spielbergian adventure film, and maybe we're not seeing those things because they're happening in other parts of the Oasis, or maybe there's other legislature that's put out by this Council of Five Children that makes everyone's lives live better. Who knows? But either way, it did leave me wanting a little bit in those points. Now, I want to ask you guys, because I'm a huge Kubrick fan. I think you guys are as well. How did you like the middle sequence?
That was kick-ass, man. When they opened up, I mean, it starts with the soundtrack and the marquee, right, in front of this world, right? And as soon as they go inside and you see that shot from the balcony of the library or the study in the Overlook Hotel, like I got tingly when I saw that at first, when we saw it for the first time. Mm-hmm. And of course, it helps when 1,000 people are cheering at the same time. As soon as that shot came up, people are like, "Oh shit!" You know, and it's like we recognize that place. Unfortunately, some friends I saw it with the second time had never seen that movie, The Shining. So they're like,
"Oh my god,
what?
We went with a group of like 14 people, and less than half had seen The Shining. What is that all about?"
Is it legal to force someone to like immediately get up and leave and go watch The Shining before coming back?
We didn't find out till after the movie, but yeah. So a lot of that sequence, but yeah, that was amazing. And here's where, you know, there's whole sections of the book that aren't there, but they replace them with other stuff. To me, that was as good or better. Adrian, what did you think about that part?
Yeah, I was going to say what really got me excited about that whole sequence was H was pretty much the same as Parsifal in the book in terms of watching every movie possible, everything that the creator loved. But in this one, H was scared of scary movies and said, I haven't seen this one. And that just added to it because you get this person who is clearly uncomfortable and has no idea what's happening. And in that moment, you get to witness something that we all love as movie lovers when we share movies we love with other people and you watch it with them for the first time. We got to see that on the big screen, somebody experiencing, you know, the Shining bathroom scene for the first time, but they're in the movie. Like, that was such a cool element.
It was especially, so it was my favorite sequence of the film. Like, I think it was so good, and it was original to the film. That was not in the book. It replaced, I guess, technically the War Games sequence in the book, or somewhere thereabouts. Yeah. But it was made especially good for me because you had H, voiced by Lena Waithe, who she's using that voice modulation because her avatar is this butch macho guy, and she's this lesbian in real life, you know? And so just the fact that we end up with like her getting to play through that, it was so much fun. I absolutely adored that scene. And that was, you know, I mentioned in the kind of the pre-spoiler section that the things that were changed were not things that I necessarily missed, even though I enjoyed those things in the book. For example, like my favorite part of the book was there's a Dungeons and Dragons. They go into the Tomb of Horrors in the book, and they fight Acererak the Demi-Lich, and it's so freaking cool. And I can't tell you how much, like, for the last few months I've been just waiting, like, man, I cannot wait to see that on the big screen. And so when I didn't get it, it was kind of like, well, darn. And then when The Shining popped up, I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you replaced it.
But that's one of the great things I love about this film, and Spielberg kind of talked about this in the Q&A. It's like, you know, he turned to Klein and he was like, you have this great novel, you have these really cool events that you set up, but like, if everybody knows every detail about these events that have already been done in the book, like, sure, you can watch the movie and maybe it's satisfying to see it play out. But for this whole generation of people who love this book, where's the new stuff for them to enjoy? Where's that like new sense of discovery, right? And so some decisions were made to change some of these elements. And I think for the most part, it works really well. Like, you do have to kind of let go of some of your favorite moments and be open to new stuff coming in. But one of the big changes that was actually a downside for me was the fact that Daito didn't die in the movie.
Yes.
In the book, the Sixers like break into his apartment, throw him over the balcony. Like, I felt like there were just no stakes in this film, guys. When Daito lived till the end, that just kind of sealed it for me a little bit. And I think if I have one complaint about the film, it's probably that.
Like, even with the, even with the explosion in the stacks, which I think was supposed to kind of cement some of the real life stakes outside of the Oasis, as it did in the book. It kind of pulled its punches a little bit with that by leaving that out. I don't know tonally how it would have fit in this movie. It was in a novel where you have I think of it as like a bigger space to tell a story. Maybe you can have tonal shifts like that and not submarine, kind of confuse your audience too much. I don't know how it would have played out. Brad, what do you have against Daito that you want to see him dead? That's what I
love Daito. Daito is one of my favorite characters, but I think it in the book, it cemented for me the threat from Sorrento and the Sixers. Like, because the blowing up the stacks thing happens very early on in the book, right? Same thing with the movie. And so the farther you get away from that event, the farther you get away from the dangers, you know what I mean, of the Sixers. So it was just kind of like a 2/3 of the way into the book reminder that like all this shit isn't just happening in the virtual world. Like there are real world stakes here too. And I get what you're saying, Jim, like in the movie, like a character death that late into the film, how does that work? But we've seen it in lots of movies where like a beloved part of the ensemble cast bites it late into the film. Yeah. We just saw in fucking Tomb Raider. You know what I mean? Like it happens and it's a thing. Like there are characters who aren't necessarily like a main character, who aren't necessarily like, part of like the super driving force of the plot elements, but you still like care about, you know what I mean? And in a way they're even more dispensable, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but like it makes you feel something and it reminds you of the danger. So I just felt like that was missing here a little.
And the thing is you're both kind of right, because the film as it is, like the film as we saw it, yeah, if we didn't change a single thing except for they killed off a character late in the movie, that would feel like a very odd tonal shift, right? But they wouldn't just do that. Like in theory, like what they really could have done is incorporated a few more of that, just the fact that reality sucks throughout the movie, not necessarily hammering us over the head with it, but just making it making us like more cognizant of the fact that there is this disparity between what it's like to live in the Oasis and what it's like to live in the real world, so that when that does happen, it doesn't feel like as much of a tonal shift. In other words, if you're going to kill off Daito, you don't necessarily have to just like throw that scene into the movie as is. You can build up an arc towards it and make it not feel like a cheat.
Probably could have done it.
And what it's going to say too about if they kept the Daito thing in there, like they did shortchange themselves. They didn't really develop Daito that well in the movie. But if they did develop Daito, that would have driven the point home about the way people spend their time at home. Like in the book, Daito was a very lonely person. And it was actually really like, yes. You know me, I cry a lot. When I reached that part in the book, I started crying. I was like, lonely guy in his apartment got killed by these goons. And he was just trying to fight against the bad guys. And that was a really emotional bit. And I think if they kept that in there, it would have driven that point home a little bit better. The unplugged from the internet once in a while.
Yeah, excellent point. I think if they would have, wanted to keep the real world stakes with the death of Daito, they would have had to do more with that character up front to develop that character. And maybe that's where they made the decision. Like they just didn't have room in the movie to develop his character almost as much as the main character. You know what I mean? Like, so they kind of had to submarine or, his storyline a little bit, which is a shame because it was, Adrian's right. It was an emotional point in the book that made the book, enhance the richness of the book. Even for me, who didn't like the book that much, I thought that was a great part of it. But yeah, maybe there just wasn't room for it in the movie, unfortunately.
And that happens with books. You've got this much story that you have to condense into this much space, and you're going to lose some things. I agree that I wish that had been there, and I wish that they had worked it in a compelling way. You're right. We would have to then develop that character. We'd have to spend a little bit more time with who he was outside in the real world so that impacted us in some way, shape, or form. Even if it was just a minute here or a minute there, a minute of film costs millions of dollars in some cases, and and can derail the overall pacing of other scenes. So I don't know what the right answer is. I do feel that kind of my end result thing to it, though, is that there is some sort of disconnect here. I wish they had just done something else with that character. I felt like the characters of, as we saw them, I felt like the characters of Daito and Sho, honestly, you could have cut them out of the movie.
They got shortchanged.
You could have
totally,
chopped them out of this movie and give Artemis the Ultraman fight scene at the end or whatever, and you've got the exact same damn movie, all things considered. So I felt like they included them because people wanted to see them included, but I don't think they were included in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Adrian had the right idea. If we had maybe taken IROC out of the movie. We could have had more room for Daito and Cho.
No complaints here.
Yeah, I thought you might like that, Will, and that's a thing they could have done. Like IROC wasn't like, yeah, IROC plays a bit of an essential role, but if they had taken IROC out and put more Daito and Show in there, I would have been cool with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I know we're getting long in the tooth on this show, and a couple of you guys are in later time zones, so we want to respect the time. But last thing I want to talk about, guys, Mecha fucking Godzilla versus a Gundam. Did we enjoy that?
That was there were two tingly moments in the movie for me. One was the beginning of the Shining scene with that crane shot of the study, and the second one was when I heard the original Akira Ifukube's Godzilla theme as Mecha Godzilla comes to life. I mean, that was pretty awesome. Even though Mecha Godzilla was run by the biggest asshole in the movie, I still loved seeing him in the movie. And I was actually rooting for him.
I mean, that's why at the end of the day, we've picked apart some of the pacing and plot and character issues. But at the end of the day, the reason you come to watch this movie is because it's like being a kid and having all of your toys spread out in front of you, and you reach over and you pick up your Godzilla toy, and you reach over and you pick up your Ultraman toy, and you start smashing those motherfuckers together. Like, this movie is a mashup of all of these things that we enjoy and that the people in this world enjoy. And so when you get to see Tracer from Overwatch flitting across the screen and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like dodging as Chucky goes whirling past their heads. Like, these are things that remind me of just like those crazy imagination games that you played as a kid. Like, if you didn't have a bunch of toys, or at least if you didn't have like the complete line of one particular one, you would have maybe 3 of the Ninja Turtles, and you'd have a couple of G.I. Joes and Optimus Prime, and you'd find a way to make that story work. And that's what this movie did. It provided you with that same degree of fun of just like digging into the toy chest and just letting your imagination go wild.
Someday I will have my dream of the Dragon Zord versus Voltron. Dun, 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 dun.
If we could only
that's going to be in Ready Player 2.
If we could only get the licensing set up for that, we'd be good. I just want to say one more thing. I mean, Spielberg said a couple of things before the movie. One of them has gotten a lot of attention on Twitter, where he said something like, "I didn't make a film, we made a movie." That was a famous quote that people have kind of jumped on for both reasons. But the one thing that he said that got me, and I think really helped my enjoyment of the movie, because as I said, going in, I didn't know what to expect. But here's what he said. He said, the movie isn't really about nostalgia. Nostalgia is only the window dressings out your side windows. But the main movie takes place out your windshield. It's a race. It's a story about the competition for control of the Oasis. And that really helped me, because it kind of de-emphasized all the pop culture whiz-bang stuff that he put in and made me focus on the story. And I'm glad he did that. I'm glad he put the attention on the story, because that's where, selfishly, that's kind of where my attention lies.
Yeah, I get where he's coming from with that, because while I was watching the trailers initially, I mentioned to you I was a little worried about all the busyness going on on the screen. And while I was watching the movie, I realized, oh, wait a minute. In the book, nostalgia is more like the foundation of the story. But in the movie, they're just extra elements. And if you notice them in the background, that's cool. But if you don't, if you just pay attention to what's going on when he puts all of these characters in front of you, I didn't find myself distracted trying to look at, oh, there's Hello Kitty, or there's
Chucky,
Tracer, there's Chucky, there's Freddy Krueger. I wasn't trying to count all the references. I think some people will.
Oh yeah,
but they're more like, as he mentioned, window dressing. And I was good with that. I love that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Well, at least none of us were like that guy who apparently had his camera in a screening, and he was taking all these pictures and posting them to the web to like point out every Easter egg and character.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Like that type of shit is fun in some capacity, like after the fact. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I want to eventually double back around to whatever BuzzFeed article or whatever is eventually going to show me the, the 10 Easter eggs I missed in Ready Player One. Like, that's going to be cool because I'm probably going to see something I didn't see before. And some of those scenes are designed that way, right? Like some of those fight scenes, there's so much going on. Like, if anyone can walk away saying they caught all the pop culture references, they're lying. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's also the kind of the douchey race to be the first to do so. And I think that sort of spoils the fun of the discovery and like the kind of the letting it trickle in. And, whether or not Spielberg says this is, looking forward or looking backwards or, whether this is a film or a movie, like, I think it's okay. Like, the elements that people are going to enjoy in this, like, this is a nostalgic film and people enjoy being reminded of some of their favorite things. And so I think that even if someone does go to this movie and say, like, I just wanted to see Voltron and Godzilla, and if they get joy out of that, like, awesome. I think that's an okay takeaway.
Absolutely agree. I mean, there's so much in this movie for you to see and latch onto, whether, and this is kind of part of why the experience at South by was so awesome for me, is like, every time you'd see something pop up that's like a reference, part of the crowd would cheer. Like when Tracer, I don't play Overwatch. Is that her name, Tracer? Okay. When she popped up, like half the audience was like, woo, oh my God. When the gremlin popped up, like part of the audience was like, oh my God, it's a gremlin.
I don't even remember the gremlin.
Oh, when the DeLorean has the Knight Rider light on it for the first time and we see it in the race, I'm cheering and nobody else is. And I'm like, guys, Knight Rider? What? But like, it's so neat. Like how many different things this movie has to excite people. But Jim, absolutely to your point, I'm glad you brought that up. It really is just window dressing for the story that's being told. But I think this movie does a good job of blending those things and making it so that they aren't ultimately too much of a distraction to some of the cool character drama that's going on. And I know we got to wrap, but I think this movie did a great job with Wade and Artemis and their relationship in this film. They got to interact more in the real world than they did in the book, because he doesn't meet her in person until the very, very like last page of the book. Whereas, in the movie, he meets her like 20 minutes into the movie. Like, it's really fast. So I like that it kind of gave room for those things to breathe and marinate too.
Ernest Cline actually owns that DeLorean with the he actually owns a DeLorean with the Ghostbusters light bar, with the Buckaroo Banzai and the all of those elements kind of incorporated in. And he's sort of known around Austin not just for like writing this, but like you'll see the DeLorean like show up at different events and stuff like that, because it's like it's his DeLorean and it's all tricked out and stuff. So just the fact that I don't know, it's so this combination of features is so iconic, both in the story and now has bled over into real life, is pretty damn cool.
Indeed. Well, I will tell you, I have spent a lot more time in VR since seeing Ready Player One twice now. And it makes me so excited for where VR is continuing to go.
And just the concept, both in the book, in the novel, the concept of a VR world fleshed out like this, and the way it was fleshed out is fantastic. And you can't really explore that in one movie. Who knows? Maybe we'll get more stories like this. I'm not saying it hasn't been done before, but it just brought up so many. I mean, we touched on maybe the dark side of what a virtual world would mean for people. And there's one scene in the movie where the Oasis shuts down, right? It basically gets shut down. And you see all these people like outside on the streets, just like wandering around like zombies, like they don't know what to do. And even the characters comment on that.
That's how I am when my Wi-Fi is down.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, that's what it's kind of feels like what we're heading for. Hopefully not. But it's very interesting if somebody, that's like an episode of Black Mirror right there. If you want to talk about one, that would be a great episode of Black Mirror. Like what happens when the internet goes away.
Indeed. All right. Well, guys, let's wrap up with some quick plugs. I want to put something on the radar for our listeners. A movie we also saw at South by Southwest. I feel like this is an extension of our South by Southwest discussion, you guys, but that's a good thing. We got a chance to see a movie called A Quiet Place, which is a new horror movie starring Emily Blunt, and it is actually coming out in wide release this weekend. So definitely, if you like horror movies, if you like suspense films, this is a really, really great one. I kind of want to see it again. Definitely, I think it's one of those that it doesn't have a ton of dialogue, but it does an amazing job of kind of incorporating just like suspense elements without needing a ton of that dialogue. Jim, I know you were a fan of that movie. Are you interested in seeing it again at all?
Oh, definitely. Like I said, I was gonna probably pick that as my plug. That thing opens Friday. It may be one of the best horror movies of the year. Not going to spoil anything. I'm sorry, Adrian, if I'm boosting your expectations too much. I hate doing that, but this one was really good. I was really surprised by this movie. Yeah, I would just say if you like kind of thriller, monster horror movies, this one is definitely worth seeing.
And a second viewing is not a bad thing, guys. This ended up being our top brass Alamo Drafthouse secret screening. They invited like all the people that saw way too many movies at the Alamo Drafthouse in 2017 to come see a movie a few weeks early. And it just so happened to be A Quiet Place, which I had already seen. But I actually ended up enjoying it more on the second. Like, I liked it the first time through. I loved it the second time through. Like, a lot of the things, like, I don't want to say I missed, but just a lot of the elements, especially the sound design, really clicked for me the second time. So great plug, guys.
All right. Awesome. Adrian, what about you? I think you're from a podcast that we really love. Could you tell us about that?
That's right. I was going to set it up by saying, hey, I guess I'll plug myself, but maybe that's a different podcast.
No, that's this podcast.
Oh, that's this one. Okay.
That actually is this podcast.
I'll be right back. I'm just going to go get something. But yeah, as Brad mentioned, I do have a podcast I co-host with my good buddy Bill. It's called The Green Screen of Death. You can find us on thegreenscreenofdeath.com, and I'm on Twitter. I'm at Adrian_Charlie. Just one more little thing here on the topic of Ready Player One and video games. I just launched my Twitch channel, so I'm The Crow Show on Twitch, and you can watch me play God of War 3 and Overwatch and Fortnite and stuff like that. I love playing games, so.
That's awesome. Like I said, I don't play Overwatch, but I was watching you earlier because I just happened to see the post pop up, and I had no idea like what was going on at all. But it was interesting to see your reactions. It was kind of like cute / adorable because like someone would be shooting at you, and subconsciously you're like moving out of the way of the bullets a little bit. And it reminded me of Ready Player One. Like if you'd had a VR visor on or something, I think that would have like made it complete. It was awesome.
That's cool. I didn't realize I do that, but I've got like a 27-inch screen right in front of my face. I'm like 6 inches away from it at all times, so that's probably why.
Nice. Well,
Adrian, all this video gamey stuff that you just talked about went completely over my head, and it's all cool and everything, but don't ever stop commenting on movies on Twitter, okay? Because I love that stuff.
Deal.
Jim, next time Adrian streams Sea of Thieves, tune in and watch him do that one, because that one's like really easy to watch. It's just pirate ships floating around. It's like, I've not played it, but it almost feels like it's more fun to like watch than I'd ever want to play it. So that would be one I think would be a good like gateway drug for you.
I'll ask Brad how I can, hook in and watch that.
We'll set you up. No worries.
Okay.
All right. Well, Adrian, we're definitely going to put some links to the Green Screen of Death and all that good stuff in the show notes. To our listeners, if you love movie podcasts and you've enjoyed hearing Adrian talk about movies on our show, you'll love it even more hearing him interact with Bill, who is also amazing. Adrian, you guys have such a cool dynamic. We love you guys. Thanks so much for taking the time and being with us on the show this week. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Like, this is awesome. As soon as you sent me a message, I was like, oh, heck yeah, I've got to be there. So really exciting. I'm always happy to be here. So thanks for having me, guys.
Our pleasure. Absolutely. Well, Jim, now that Adrian has plugged himself, what have you got this week?
Oh, what do I have? Let me see. I have a Twitter account. You can at me or catch me, follow me on there. It's at JJP Out West. Find me there. I talk mostly about movies and stuff. I'm not a hot take master, but I'm learning, and it's fun for me. So if you find me on there, drop me is it a DM, Adrian? What is it?
Oh, say at me anytime.
At me anytime. All right. All right. Cool. And I'm also on Facebook at Jim Pugliafico. Find me there.
Perfect. Thanks, babe. And Will, if you've got a plug, go for it, but also tell people where they can find you online.
This week has been all about like which sitcoms we should and should not watch on social media. And I definitely have some opinions about the big one that everyone's been talking about, whether you should or shouldn't watch it. But I decided to kind of divorce myself from that situation. It was feeling too toxic and a little too poisonous. And I decided, like, if I wanted to watch a sitcom about the All-American Family, there was another one that I kept seeing recommended by person after person after person. And I decided, you know what, instead of wading into that, I'm just going to watch this other thing instead. And I'm actually glad I did. It's a Netflix, like live studio audience with a laugh track and everything, comedy, which, trust me, I hate laugh tracks, but I actually very much enjoy this show called One Day at a Time, which is a sort of a reimagining of the old Norman Lear show. One Day at a Time follows 3 generations of a Cuban American family all living in the same house. The main character is Penelope. She's like this divorced mother who like was a medic in the military, suffering from PTSD and having to deal with the VA for her shoulder issues. She has a rebellious teenage daughter, a tween son who's like really into like technology, and like a very old school mother played by Rita Moreno. And you know what? This show is like, it's everything that you would expect from a sitcom, like the laughs and like the like the pauses and kind of the showboating and like all of that stuff, which is cheesy as fuck. But like in the first like 8 or 9 episodes, like I actually cried a few times, which I literally have never done watching a laugh track comedy before. So this is high quality stuff. It's like, it's not like the same intensity of comedy of some of the other stuffs out there, but like when you're doing laundry, cooking dinner, and you want something light to keep your attention and to also sort of ground you in like what the American family looks like today, 2018. I think One Day at a Time is one of the best examples out there right now. It's on Netflix. No excuse. Give it a watch. And they're like 2 seasons in, so it's like you can binge watch quite a bit right now.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Well, if people,
where you can find me, find me on Twitter at whateverco. Find me on Facebook. My name is William Lindis. Please send me a message first. Please look for me on Letterboxd. I love connecting with listeners there. It's where I go to rank and review films. I'm William Lindis on there as well.
All right, excellent. And you can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the one with the bunch of friends in common with you, probably. You can find me on Twitter at iBradPro. And I think, guys, A Quiet Place next week. Yes? No?
Looking like that. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
I'm on board. Well, then, guys, make sure to go see it this weekend in preparation. Adrian and Charlie, one more time, it has been a pure pleasure having you on the Movie Bears podcast with us. Thank you again. We're already looking forward to the next time. All right, everybody. We out. See you next week. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.